Republican Senator Lindsey Graham with now more than a dozen candidates seeking the GOP
Yeah.
nomination.
Not enough, apparently.
What sets you apart?
I think I'm best qualified to be commander-in-chief on day one. A lot of good people, but nobody has, quite frankly, in the last decade been doing what I've been doing. I've been to Iraq and Afghanistan over 35 times. I've been busting my butt trying to understand what this war on terror is all about. I've learned from my mistakes, Obama's and Bush's, and I think I know how to degrade and destroy radical Islam, reset world order. Our friends are afraid. Our enemies don't respect us. We've got to rebuild our military. I've been in the Air Force for 33 years, just retired. I'm ready to go on day one. I understand leading from the front is an essential ingredient to world order and American national security. And finally, when it comes to radical Islam, you can never have peace with these guys, but you can have security. That's going to require us helping people over there. Where I find the will to fight radical Islam in the region, I'll help provide it capacity, because if we don't, they're coming here.
How do we earn the respect of our enemies?
Just by being a very good friend to your friends and making your enemies believe that you have the determined will, the overwhelming capability, and the capacity to deliver when you speak. Never draw a red line unless you mean it. And the first thing I would do to reset the Mideast is come up with a game plan, not only to destabilize Iraq, which you need more American troops to do, but go to Turkey, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, the entire region, and say, we're going to form an army. We're going to go in together to Syria. We're going to pull up the caliphate by its roots. And if you don't do that, you'll never destroy the caliphate. We're going to push Assad out. We're going to hold the ground until we repair the damage done in Syria. You're going to be the bulk of the army, but we're going to give you capacity you don't have. And here's the price of admission. Stop funding terrorism. Stop double-dilling. And oh, by the way, change your own behavior. Let women drive.
In this post-Cold War era, what is the biggest threat that we as a country face?
Radical Islam with a weapon of mass destruction.
How likely is that to happen?
If we do a bad deal with Iran, very likely. If they continue to expand and hold territory, recruit, and become rich, the stronger they are over there, the more property they hold, the more territory they hold, the more people they recruit to their cause, the more likely they'll develop a weapon of mass destruction, buy one. But the biggest threat of all, way above Russia, is the Ayatollah with a nuke in Iran. Can't let that happen.
If you travel the streets of Iraq or Iran or Afghanistan, don't talk to the government leaders, the military leaders, what's their impression of the U.S.?
They like us in Afghanistan. They want us to stay. Iraq is mixed, but the Afghan people understand we're not there as the British or as Alexander the Great. We don't want anything other than just a good relationship and a front line to protect our homeland. So the Afghans welcome our presence. If we don't leave about 10,000 troops behind beginning in 2017 when we withdraw down our forces, then we're making a mistake like we did in Iraq. Iraq is a place that was in a good spot in 2011 that's completely come undone. The Anbar Sunnis do not trust us because they think we cut and run on them. The Kurds respect us, but they are disappointed we're not giving them arms. Everything going through Baghdad gets locked down. And the Iranians are the biggest influence inside of Iraq now. As president, I would change that.
But as you well know, the president said we can't stay in Iraq forever. We had to make a decision.
No,
we
that's
can't
not true.
keep U.S. blood and treasure. That was his argument.
Well, and he was wrong. We should have stayed with 10,000 troops in Iraq because our military recommended it. Our military leaders to a person said, a residual force of 10,000 will hold this place together. We'd had about 130 or 40,000, maybe more at one time. So instead of listening to sound military advice to leave a residual force, he pulled the plug to keep a campaign promise. Al-Qaeda in Iraq was on its knees. If he had listened to military commanders, Iraq would still be together today. 3 years ago, when the Free Syrian Army had Assad on the ropes, we were all asking for a no-fly zone to protect them. And when he crossed the red line by using chemical weapons, I supported a military attack on the regime of Bashar Assad. The failure to not leave troops in Iraq and not help the Free Syrian Army 3 years ago has led to the rise of ISIL. Bush made mistakes. Taking the Iraqi army down was a mistake. So at the end of the day, we're living with the mistake of leaving too soon. We're about to repeat that same mistake in Afghanistan.
I want to come back to some of these issues, but let's talk politics. What's your path to the nomination? How do you get there?
Retail politicking. Convince enough people on the ground in Iowa and New Hampshire I'm ready to be commander-in-chief better than everybody else, including Hillary Clinton. Try to find a team that will come out and caucus for me and finish in the top tier in New Hampshire. John McCain won New Hampshire twice. 40% of the people who vote in New Hampshire will be independents. I think I've got a good message. Too many terrorists, too much debt, too few jobs. I think I have a bluntness that sells, particularly in New Hampshire. If I can do well in New Hampshire, we're going to kill them in South Carolina, and I'll be in the Final Four.
You two are best friends. How did that develop?
Respect for John from me, over time understanding who I was, and I earned his respect. John McCain and I have traveled the world together. We've been more right than wrong when it comes to foreign policy. I admire him greatly. He was fifth in a four-person race in 2008, came back to win by sheer determination and having a message. I helped him in 2000. I was an impeachment manager. He got to know me during the impeachment trial of Bill Clinton, so it was an odd way to meet. But just over time, a mutual respect. And when he says he wants me to be President of the United States, it's more than friendship. We're very close friends. But he wouldn't say it if he didn't believe it. One of the highlights of my life is to have John McCain think of me in those terms.
You first met him when?
I first met John really during the impeachment trial, maybe a little bit before. I'd always known of him as being a legendary war hero, but it was in the late 90s. He came to me one day and asked if I would support him in 2000. I said, yeah, I'd be glad to. And that relationship started in the late 90s. I was one of his campaign co-chairmen in South Carolina. And I've been his friend ever since. I love the guy. I admire him a lot.
What advice has he given you in this process leading up to your announcement and now that you're an official candidate?
He's been encouraging me above all others to run. He thinks that I understand the world and got the skill set to be a good commander-in-chief. Basically, go to Iowa and New Hampshire, spend a lot of time doing town halls in New Hampshire. Don't be deterred by early polling, just stick to it. A lot of his friends in New Hampshire are going to help me. At the end of the day, just stick with it and just get on the ground. The bottom line is there's a tension now in the system between money and retail politics. This desire to use debate admission criteria based on national polling is a huge mistake. The RNC, Fox, CNN, Facebook, all these people are making a huge mistake. I think all of us should have a voice early on. If you file, if you've got any credibility at all, give everybody a chance. Then over time, we'll weed the process will weed you out. But when you make it based on national polling, getting on stage based on national polling, that undercuts the idea of going to Iowa, New Hampshire, and South Carolina. It makes you have to change your strategy. It makes you think about national poll numbers rather than early primary state participation. If it were not for Iowa, New Hampshire, and South Carolina, you would buy the presidency. There would be no John McCains, potentially Lindsey Grahams. It would all be about money, and I think there's an effort to undercut the early primary process, and I will not accept that without a fight.
Why do you think Fox News had the criteria, the top 10, with 17 candidates?
I think
now
they're
in this
worried
race?
about television, the crowded field. I'm worried about democracy. I could care less about television. I don't care if they've got a problem getting 16 people on the stage. Break it in 8 and 8. I do know this. The day you determine eligibility to get in a debate based on national polling, you change the dynamic of the early primary process that served my party well. You're destroying the ability of a retail politician, a somewhat well-funded campaign to take off based on retail politics. The New Hampshire, Iowa, South Carolina voter that requires you to come to small gatherings to answer hard questions, they're replaced by a national pollster. This is a very bad idea. I don't care what kind of problem they have regarding their television. I care about democracy, and we're about to lose something that stood the test of time. Retail politicking in early states that are small enough where you can make a difference based on who you are and what you believe.
And yet you appear on Fox News often.
Yeah.
Do you think the network has undue influence in this process?
I think the fact that 75% of Republican primary voters watch Fox makes sense to me. I love Fox News. I don't like the idea of excluding people based on national polling because you changed the early primary process. At the end of the day, Fox News is the primary source of news for most primary voters. My concern is that if you say you can only be in a debate based on national poll numbers, you're taking away from the early primary process, which is an antidote to big money. The only thing left in the system as an antidote to big money is Iowa, New Hampshire, and South Carolina.
You announced in Central South Carolina.
Yes.
The backdrop was what was once the Sanitary Cafe. I've got to ask you, first of all, where did that name come from for your mom and dad?
It just sounds good. Who wouldn't want to eat in the Sanitary Cafe? Good marketing. My dad.
What did that feel like for you?
Overwhelming. Number one, neither one of my parents finished high school. I'm the first in my family to go to college, but to have my sister do this was just all I could do to speak, quite frankly. We grew up, we owned a liquor store, restaurant, bar, pool room. That's why I'd be a good president. I ran the pool room. We literally lived in the back of the restaurant bar until I was in high school when we bought a house. We lived in one room, but I was incredibly well loved. When I was 21, my mom was diagnosed with Hodgkin's disease. She passed within 6 months, and we got wiped out financially. We were an underinsured family. 15 months later, my dad passes. My sister's 13. We move in with an aunt and uncle that never made over $25,000 in their lives. If it weren't for Social Security survivor benefits coming to my sister, we'd had a hard time paying the bills. And my aunt and uncle helped me raise my sister, and I finished college and just retired from the Air Force. So when I was thinking about appearing in front of the store, I was thinking about growing up on the streets of that town and my parents. And oh my God, if there's ever an example of the American dream, that was it.
Let me ask you about your mom, because you prayed for her. You got the word from the doctor that she had passed away. You talked to your mother. Well, what happened?
She was diagnosed in the late stages of Hodgkin's disease and fought like a tiger because she wanted to live to see her kids grow up. And she fought really hard, but toward the end, her body was just running out, not her spirit. And there was a few days before she actually passed, we thought we'd lost her, and the doctor injected something into her heart, and she came back. And I just remember being with her and saying, "Mom, it's okay." I think having me say that allowed her to let go. And the hardest thing I've ever done was to go back home and tell my dad that my mom had just passed. He had been in the hospital for something else. But all of us have stories. That's just mine, and there are plenty of people who've suffered far more than I have. But I'll remember that for the rest of my life, how hard she fought to try to see her kids grow up. And to those who've lost their parents, and to the, and to parents who don't see their kids grow up, I know it's tough.
Did she talk to you at all?
Mm-hmm. She was fairly lucid for the last couple of days. And she was worried, about my sister being young and making sure I'd take care of her. My dad was 17 years older. He had had a heart attack. He was in his late 60s. So we always thought she would be around. She was 52. So we always thought that Dad would go first because he is 17 years older. But life is not what you think. Life is about what happens. And so she was worried. And I think I was able to reassure her that we would make it, and she reassured me that she would be fine, but it was still tough.
In your book, My Story, you talk about heaven, that she told you about heaven.
Yeah, my aunt, there was a time when I wasn't there that my aunt, Nell, she'd had an episode of where she had one of these seizures, and they brought her back. And she was talking about, and experiencing something like heaven, and she felt more at peace. I remember I was at home with my dad. He had been in the hospital and just gotten home, so I was at home with him and my sister, and an aunt and uncle helping with him. And I got a call from another uncle saying, "I don't think your mom's going to make it." And I talk about it in the book, getting in the car and driving to the hospital, and the car was on empty. It was the empty light was on, and it's like a 25-mile ride, and I was just praying, "Please let me get there. Please let me get there." And I made it in time to talk to her, and she had one of the seizures, and she came back, and I just said, Mom, it's okay. You can let go. And she passed, and as I was going home, I pulled into the gas station. The car conked out right when I got at the pump. Things that, you know, people who go through this remember it.
Your dad was called the Dude.
Yeah, he's called Dude.
Why?
There's a good baseball player apparently named Dude, and he was a good baseball player. I've never heard anybody call my dad anything other than Dude all my life. And his name was Florence James Graham. He was very funny. He owned the bar, restaurant, liquor store, pool room, and I came along late in life. He was in his mid-50s when my sister was born, late 40s when I was born. I can't remember going anywhere without my dad. He'd take me hunting, to the car races, every ball game I ever had. You know, I came along later in life, and I think my parents appreciated it more.
Initially, it was reported that your parents did not serve African Americans at the bar. That changed in the 70s.
Yeah, I grew up in Central, a small cotton mill town. We had a restaurant, bar, served hamburgers, hot dogs, and beer. Probably sold more beer than we did hamburgers and hot dogs. But during the 60s, African Americans would come in and get the beer to go. And that's the way it was. And I remember thinking as a kid, asking my dad, I love my mom and dad, they're by no means perfect people, but he said, well, that's just the way it was. But I can remember times when loudmouths would act up and say very nasty things. I can remember this as a kid, and I can remember one time when we called him Uncle Jake, who was a giant African-American, wonderful man. We went rabbit hunting with him. He came in and ordered beer, and this guy was making a complete ass of himself, saying really nasty things. I can remember it like it was yesterday. My dad took my midget football helmet and just knocked the crap out of the guy. So, but at the end of the day, things changed in the South, and things changed in our restaurant, in our bar. So from the time I grew up to now, my state has changed a lot. I think the first time I ever went to school with an African-American child, I was in the 6th or 7th grade, and there was just a handful. And then I didn't think that much about it, other than it was a big deal. Everybody made it a big deal. But I can only imagine now what their parents must have thought, sending your kid for the first time to an integrated school setting where there are 5 kids in a class of maybe 30 or 35. South Carolina's come a long way. We've got a long way to go, but I've seen things change in my lifetime, much for the better.
Are you surprised how quickly the debate changed over the Confederate flag?
Yeah, well, up until the family spoke. To understand the situation, you have to understand how it got to be on the Confederate War Memorial. It was flown in 1961 on the 100th anniversary. The Confederate flag was put on top of the state capitol to commemorate the 100th anniversary of the Civil War. Nobody took it down, and it became a divisive symbol during the Civil Rights era. And by the late 90s, a compromise was reached where we would take the flag off the top of the dome, put it by a Confederate War Memorial in front of the Capitol, and build an African-American war museum display on State House grounds. That stood for 15 years. Then there was the shooting. The truth is, before the shooting, this was brought up in the governor's race. Nobody did anything to change the compromise because the state went through a really hard time to get that compromise. But the shooter adopted the flag as his symbol, and the family members of the victims embraced him. And that made it impossible for South Carolina not to change. We could have done one of two things. People could have went to the streets, probably with some justification, or we could go down the road of healing and reconciliation. The family members of the victims, when they embraced the shooter in court and said, "You've destroyed my family, but I'm praying for you and I love you," that changed everything. It was impossible not to grant the request of the AME Church and other people throughout our state to remove the flag. Removing the flag was an act of reconciliation. The heroes of this debate were the family members of the victims. The politicians followed the people here.
A couple more questions about you and the bar. Did you work there with your mom and dad?
Oh, yeah. I ran the pool room when I was old. It was downstairs. You had a liquor store on one side and the bar on the other. And we literally lived in the back. We had a kitchen where we cooked. That was our kitchen. We had one big room in the back where we all lived until I was pretty much in high school, yeah, I would sit on the stool and listen to the jukebox and play they'd probably, you know, nowadays it'd probably taken me and my sister away from my mom and dad, but it was a great experience. Yeah, I had a lot of friends, you know. It was a bar where people would, this was their bar. They would come, regular customers, got to be part of their family. It's an incredible experience.
You're very close with your sister Darlene, correct?
Yes, I'm. So, of all the things that have happened in my life, her turning out so well is the highlight of it by far, because she was 13, lost both of her parents. She's got 2 daughters, one 21, one 6, and she's made an incredible life for herself. And when she got up there and introduced me, it was just about all I could do to speak.
If you are elected president, you'd be the first since James Buchanan to be a bachelor in the White House.
That's what I've been told.
So what role would she play in the White House, if any?
Well, she would be a support network for me. I hadn't really thought much about it, but at the end of the day, whatever I asked her to do, she would do. And if she took a role on, she would be a great representative of our country. I can't think of a better person to represent our country in an event than my sister. But at the end of the day, I think America can handle this. I want to be able to say, everybody can grow up to be president, even if you're single. We'll see.
Let's talk about a couple of moments in your career. You made a name for yourself during the impeachment trial of Bill Clinton. Was that the right thing to do by the Republican Party?
Here's what I think. I think his reaction to the event required us to do what we did. The sexual behavior and the misconduct there, who are we to judge? We're all, you know, have our problems. He's human. But when he tried to basically stop the legal process, you can't have the most powerful person in the world intimidating witnesses, manipulating evidence in a sexual harassment lawsuit. Every sexual harassment lawsuit's about sex. So when Paula Jones sued him because he acted inappropriately, according to her, when she was an employee for the state of Arkansas, and when he interjected himself in that lawsuit and started tampering with witness testimony, and when he started trying to hide evidence, then I think he needed to be held accountable. In terms of him and Monica Lewinsky, that was sort of a secondary event. All I can say is it wasn't about sex for me, it was about the legal process. I voted against the one article of impeachment where he lied about his sexual relationship, because I think a lot of people, when caught off guard, would probably do the same. And to me, that's not a high crime or misdemeanor, but manipulating the legal system is.
Were you satisfied with the final outcome by the Senate?
I was okay. We made our best case. At the end of the day, I think the manipulation of the testimony and the evidence in the lawsuit justified the action, but I accepted the results of the Senate and I was ready to move on, and I have. The process worked.
Any long-term impact on Americans or our country as a result of all of that?
The only thing I can say for sure is that even the most powerful person in the world can be held accountable for monkeying with a trial. He lost his bar license for a while, and I thought it was an appropriate thing. So I think in that regard, I hope everybody understands, because you're President of the United States, you still have to play the game like the rest of us when you get sued, and you have a unique responsibility because you're the chief law enforcement official appointing the Attorney General.
And at one point you wanted to see the ouster of Speaker Newt Gingrich. Why?
Well, I like Newt, but he'd lost his way. You know, on Monday he would say, we're not going to do this, and by Tuesday we would change. I think toward the end we got to be sort of a rudderless ship. You know, Newt was a visionary. Without Newt Gingrich, we would have never had the Republican majority. There are people who can take you up to the promised land. He's a Moses in a way. A bit erratic. It got to be frustrating. I truly believed in what we were doing. You know, when Bill Clinton promised to put his budget on the table to balance it, we didn't care how he did it, and he broke his word, and, you know, the government shut down. I always thought, well, wait a minute, you know, I'm not telling you how to balance the budget, but the deal was, we'll run the government, keep the government open, you put your budget on the table, we'll put ours. And he basically backed out of the deal, and eventually we kind of caved in there. I was one of 13 people saying, no, that's not the right thing. And over time, more episodes like that. So Newt's an incredible man. He's one of the smartest people I've ever met. But in terms of running the House over time, it was a bit difficult for him.
You graduated from the University of South Carolina. When did you enter politics and why?
Well, I entered politics when I got out of the Air Force. I graduated the University of South Carolina. Then I went to law school, got an educational delay so I could go to law school and see my sister get into high school. The Air Force was really accommodating to me. I was an ROTC student, got my commission. My dad and my sister pinned my bars on me, and he died shortly after that. So the bottom line is I came back and ran for the State House in 1992 after serving 6.5 years on active duty. I'd always talked about it, and family and friends gave me sort of the backbone to do it. I remember when I first ran for the House, you know, no one in my family had ever been in politics. So it was a big deal. And I jumped in 92, won, beat an incumbent just by sheer work. Good family, good friends taking me around, just knocking on doors. In 1994, Butler Derrick, the Democratic congressman who'd held the district for 20-something years, the 3rd Congressional District of South Carolina, retired. I liked politics. I knew in South Carolina these things come open about once every 30 or 40 years, so I jumped in.
Why the Air Force?
I wanted to fly. I wanted to be a pilot. Then my hearing went bad, and so I stayed in the Air Force. I almost got out twice, and people convinced me to stay in and helped me stay in. But I wanted to be a pilot. Didn't work out. Probably good that I didn't. I'd probably kill myself. I wound up being a lawyer.
And then you ran for the House of Representatives.
Yeah, I was a contract with America baby. You know, I drank the Kool-Aid. I was all for the The one thing I don't want to ever do is lose the enthusiasm of the 1994 Lindsey Graham. But I think I've learned a lot. You can't get everything you want right away. Newt, the older I am, the more I respect Newt, and I was too hard on him. He was probably doing the best he could. So I've matured, not in the sense of not caring about big change, but trying to find a way to accommodate big change in a much more practical way, realizing the other side exists.
Well, how do you do that, though? How do you compromise and yet hold to your core convictions?
Well, anybody that's married, that's in a Rotary Club or goes to church understands how you do this. At the end of the day, what you're trying to do is what Ronald Reagan and Tip O'Neill were able to do. When you got a big problem like Social Security about to fall apart, you're running out of money. Alan Greenspan says you got to do the following to save it. You muster the courage to tell the people in your party, we got to give some here, and the other people have to do the same for the good of the country. So the key is to pick the issues that affect us all. I love a good fight about ideology, about how big the tax code be, how small it should be. But there are certain things we got to get right. 80 million baby boomers are going to retire en masse. We're going to have to do what Ronald Reagan and Tip O'Neill did again. Somebody's got to do something like Simpson Bowles. When it comes to immigration reform, I've been dealing with this for 10 years. I think I'm the most qualified person running for president to deal with this issue. I've come to realize that for me to get border security, more legal immigration, I've got to deal with the Democrats rationally with 11 million. That we're not going to get everything we want in immigration reform without dealing with Democrats. And Democrats want some things too. And what they want, above all else, is to give a rational solution to the 11 million. Nobody wants felons to stay, but the idea that non-felons can stay here on learning the English language is a condition of staying, paying taxes, getting the back of the line, all makes sense to me, and that's how you get bipartisanship. They have to get something too.
As you well know, Donald Trump is now part of this debate over immigration.
Yeah, I noticed.
What's your impression of him as a candidate and as a person?
He's a complicated guy. I mean, he's done a lot of good. I just went to a golf tournament today for No Greater Sacrifice, a charity to help wounded warriors. That was at one of his golf clubs. You know, I'm sure he gave them a good deal. What he is saying about illegal immigrants as a group is not really about immigration. It's about how we view people. I've been dealing with this, Steve, for 10 years now. The Dreamers, these are kids that came into our country with their parents as young kids, sometimes babies. And when you tell them to go back home, the only place they know to go is where they've been raised. They all have brothers and sisters. The Dreamers are illegal. They were brought here as very small children. They've grown up in America. But their parents have had a couple of kids, maybe one or two, maybe more, who are legal because they were born here. What Trump doesn't understand is that when you say that most illegal immigrants are rapists and drug dealers. Some are okay. That you're telling the younger brother or sister of the dreamer that their brother or sister, their mom or their dad, is a drug dealer and a rapist. Nobody is going to be able to respond to that message without being offended. If you're a decent person at all, you would be offended by this characterization. From a party point of view, this is a defining moment. It's no longer about illegal immigration, which we all would like to fix. It's about, do we as Republicans buy into that view of these people, the 11 million? I do not. Most are hardworking, very decent people, trying to make a better life. We're trying to create order out of chaos. They came here to improve their lives, and some are bad, but most are good. And if we don't fix this as a party, we're going to never be able to achieve the potential that I would like. I think we'll lose the 2016 election, and we probably should.
In Lindsey Graham's view, the role of the federal government is what?
To defend the nation is the primary role. When you take the federal budget pie, the first slice you take out of it is the Defense Department and all the defense agencies that keep us safe. Primary job of the federal government is to defend the nation. The primary job of the president is to be commander-in-chief. We're about to cut our budgets to historic lows on the defense side. By 2021, we'll be spending about 2.3% of GDP on defense, half of what we normally spend. If I'm president, we're going to fix that. If you don't do something like Simpson Bowles to deal with the baby boomer retirement, where you flatten out the tax code and do revenue on the Republican side, means test and age adjust entitlements, we become grease. So the primary role of the federal government is to defend the nation. Social Security is a federal government program. Half of today's seniors would be in poverty without a Social Security check. It's going to be overwhelmed and go bankrupt if somebody doesn't fix it. I'm 60, I don't have any kids, I'm not married. When I was 22, I needed every dime coming into my family. I would gladly give up some benefits in the future to save the system for people who need it more than I do. The primary role of the President of the United States is to bring us together, to do the big things that affects us all, to defend this country. And where everybody, not everybody, but most people are one car wreck away from needing somebody to help them, including their own government. You just got to make it sustainable. It's too large, it's unsustainable, it does too many things poorly, but there's a place for government, including the federal government, in our lives.
Big argument and debate over infrastructure, roads and bridges, airports, an $18 trillion debt, a defense budget that you say needs to be increased. So how do you come to terms with all of that? And is there a way to raise taxes?
Absolutely. We're $168 billion short of the money you need in the Highway Trust Fund. People drive further on a gallon of gas. Hybrid cars abound. So the gas taxes are not generating enough revenue. We got to structurally change the trust fund, find ways to get hybrid cars to pay in the system. There's $3 trillion of corporate earnings parked overseas, 2 to 3, that are not going to come back into the country at a 35% tax rate. An American-owned company doing business, let's say in Germany, you paid taxes in Germany. We're one of the few countries that require you to pay 35% to bring the profits back in. I'd have a one-time good deal there and take the revenue to put in the trust fund to kind of get us started again. But the real problem for the country, what makes us Greece, is not the $18 trillion debt. What makes us Greece is the 80 million baby boomers, of which I am one, retire in the next 20, 25 years, wiping out Medicare and Social Security. By 2031, all the taxes we collect will go to pay Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, and interest on the debt. If you don't adjust the age of retirement, means test benefits, and flatten out the tax code to generate some revenue, eliminate deductions, and put some of the money on debt, we become Greece. That's sort of the architecture of Simpson Bowles. As President of the United States, one of the first things I would do is dust off Simpson Bowles, change it around a bit, whatever is necessary to get people to buy in, and get our long-term debt straight. $70 trillion of unfunded liability exists today. $70 trillion of money we don't have to pay Social Security and Medicare bills we know we're going to acquire from the retirement of the baby boomers. The only way to fix this is bipartisan, for people younger to work a little longer because we live longer, and people my income level to give some up. If you make over $200,000 a year in retirement, you get a $109 a month on average subsidy to pay your Medicare Part D prescription drug premiums. If I was president, if I were president of the United States, I'd ask you to pay it yourself. That saves a lot of money over time.
How can you beat Hillary Clinton if you are the Republican nominee?
Well, number one, her definition of flat broke and mine are a bit different. She's a good person, but she's lost her way. She wants power too much. She wants to have power just for the sake of having it, I think. It's one of the things the Clintons do is just, you know, let's win the next election. For what purpose? If you really think after 8 years in the White House and your husband being president, your family's flat broke, you really don't understand flat broke. I do understand it. If you're looking for something new, she doesn't represent it. She is one of the architects of our failed foreign policy. Her and Bill sold Obamacare better than Obama did, which is going to destroy the healthcare economy. And if you're looking for real change in this country, something different than the last 8 years, she is your worst choice. If you're looking for somebody who's ready to be commander-in-chief on day one, who will tell their own party you're wrong at times, and who's walked in the shoes of the average American, I'm your best choice.
If you have nothing to do, a day that is totally free and open for Lindsey Graham, what do you enjoy doing?
Sleep as late as I can. I enjoy hunting. I enjoy playing golf with the buddies I grew up with. Nothing better than to go play golf with people I went to high school with, come home, take a nap, go to a movie and dinner. Really simple stuff. I love to hunt. I love to go to movies. I love to play golf. The reason I like golf so much is I'm not very good at it, and I'm always trying to get better.
How do you get better?
Just by playing more, apparently, because I'm not getting better talking about it. You know, at the end of the day, golf is a great game. It tells you a lot about people, and it's a chance to get outside, spend some time with people that you like. It's just a great game, and at the end of the day, the thing I like most are the people that I'm the closest to, and a relaxing day for me is being around the people I care about, doing things I like.
You mentioned high school. What were you like in high school?
I was a loudmouth. I was the guy that was always in trouble. You know, I was funny. I had a good sense of humor. I played football at 110 pounds, and people accepted me. My mouth was probably bigger than my ability to play football. I really enjoyed high school. I really enjoyed playing sports. And I learned this: you don't have to be the best to be part of something. I was by no means a great athlete, but I got a lot out of being part of a team, and I contributed in my own way. And my coaches and my teachers affected me to this day. They saw things in me I didn't see in myself. If you have encouragement as a young person, if you have a loving mom and dad and a supportive network of teachers and coaches, boy, are you lucky. Even though I lost my parents early on, I was a lucky guy. You know what I think a lot about? What happens if you don't have a family? What happens if there's nobody in your life ever telling you, I love you? What happens if there's no one in your life saying, you know, you're really smart? That bothers me a lot. I just feel so lucky. And what can I do as president to change that to some extent?
Final question. Who is part of the Lindsey Graham team? Who do you rely on for advice? And who are the type of people you'd surround yourself if you're President of the United States?
Well, I've got a really good network of former military officers, current military officers who advise me about the way forward in the war on terror. I listen to people who have been on the ground and have proven their worth. When it comes to domestic policy, I have been a very hands-on, heavily involved senator in almost everything, from energy, environment, working with Kerry and Lieberman. I've been part of every gang to fix illegal immigration. I have a pretty extensive network in a lot of subject areas. But at the end of the day, the people that I probably talk to the last, right before I make a decision, are the ones that know me the best and that will tell me I'm full of it when nobody else will. If you're a political leader, you need some friends who are not intimidated by telling you you're full of it, and I have got them in abundance.
You think you can win this thing?
Sure. I'm not doing this for my health. I'm doing it because I think the world is in a bad spot, and we need a commander-in-chief that can reset things pretty quickly. And here's the good news. It wouldn't take that much. The Mideast is yearning for an American leader to come on the stage. The bad guys are not 10 feet tall. The next president, here's Obama's biggest mistake. He really doesn't have personal relationships with the people in this town who can make a difference. I know almost everybody in this town who can make a difference. I like them, and I think generally they like me. The skill set that I bring to the table is exactly what we need. Someone who's learned the hard way about what got us here in terms of radical Islam and how we move forward. He could deal with Putin in China in a practical but firm way, understands what makes the military work, give them what they need to win, not put them in a bad spot. Above all else, understand what America's all about. If we don't lead, no one else will who's good. No one can replace us. When it comes to being the President of the United States, the best thing you can do for the country is bring people together to do things that they didn't think they can do, but they need to do. Now, I've had a pretty good track record of working with Democrats on big things. If I were President of the United States, I'd put the country ahead of the party. Yeah, I think I can win.
Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina, we thank you for your time.
Thanks a bunch.